Hello world, Patricia O'Connor here, and a sleepy Frida Reba Darcy. It's a great day to be napping. It's a rainy day in the bay, and I got my butt parked on the couch just like she does. I was gonna do a quick look. Last night, when I was doing a little bit of rearranging after I got off work, I brought in this tree. What is this? This is a stick. This is a stick in a $12 Japanese bonsai pot. What makes it a $12 bonsai pot is, I think, right here. You can see the seam where it was just basically clay pushed into a little mold shape and then glazed white. So yeah, but I love this little thing, and the reason that obnoxious root there too. I mean, there's so much to kind of go, what the heck are you even doing here? But on the other hand, this is my first little bonsai project. This is was a wisteria cutting, and it is a white wisteria. Those of you who decide that you might want to do a wisteria, if you plant one from seed, the time to go from a sprout to a blooming tree is decades. So if you want to see one bloom, see this is like 3 years old. It went from a pencil to this in 3 years. So we're not setting the world on fire. We're not killing it by any stretch of the imagination. But let me tell you what, come spring, when this thing makes a cascade of white flowers about a foot long, and the whole apartment smells of wisteria, which is a wonderful, sweet, very elegant fragrance. It doesn't come off perfumey or anything. It's like, wow, I would, yeah. So that kind of makes it worth the price of, free rent for that alone. So last night I weeded the poor thing, and that's just, I just thought I would take a moment to show you what's going on there before we move on to what we are actually talking about. Little white flies are buzzing around this guy because it's always a good source of solid water. If you do wisterias, don't do like I did and watch a bunch of just generic wisteria videos and decide to plant your bonsai tree in some really, 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 really water holding medium like potting soil. If you do that plus a bonsai tree, you can, plus a bonsai pot, you can make an acrid mess out of that, even though they like a lot of water. This one does spend its time in a pie dish, and it does stay submerged up to about there. I keep this guy happy and healthy by changing the substrate from the water holding sponge that I had it planted in before to some akadama that I had. That's actually pure akadama, I think. And that might also be a reason for its slower growth, but it likes it. And the other side to that is, in the summer, that little trick with the pan in the water, that helps get blooms for these guys. Also, I feed it. There are things, fertilizers, that you can give these guys that will inhibit or get in the way of them blooming. I'm thinking, was it nitrogen? Anyway, I'm not even going to make a guess as to what vitamin it was we needed to, we were going to try to avoid to keep it blooming. But I use BioGold, and it's never stopped any of my wisterias from doing their blooming things. Be careful how you cut the buds in these on the winter, because part of those buds that you're looking at there are going to be next spring's foliage, and part of those buds are going to be next year's blooms. Personally, I don't know how to tell them the difference at this part. I've never really paid attention to that part. I mean, it's not like I couldn't watch a video and find out, but I don't do a lot of pruning this time of year if I want to see it bloom, because I assume I would probably cut off the wrong part. The other side to that is, if you want to keep these guys making trunk down here, they're always going to try to be a vine. So let the tendrils go off every spring, and then chop those puppies back before they start developing next year's bloom buds. If you want to keep your wisteria happening down here, what will happen is it'll grow more and more up here and try to add more mass farther and farther out and up. And anything that you got going on down here will start to suffer because of that. So the idea about a wisteria is you need to try to keep them small. Other than that, If you have had one for a number of years, you can get ramification out of them. It almost doesn't look like it when you see one growing in a vine because every runner just wants to go off and be its own tree kind of a thing. But it's maintained, and you make a plan early and and sort of stick to it. It's not too hard with these guys. They grow pretty easily, pretty well. They respond well to being fed, and they love a lot of water. So this isn't going to be the thing that I am likely to overwater. I'm not being sarcastic. You can overwater a wisteria. I used to make the joke that was about like overwatering your goldfish, but when I had this stuff in some potting soil, that was something. I had some acrid business going on here, and whiteflies were calling that their little heaven, and they were going to town on roots, and everything suffered until I did a repot and got it out of that substrate. That was the wrong way to go with that. The high dollar potting mix, trying to be nice to my plants, and yeah, Pat just made the wrong moves there. So that's kind of what I picked up on these guys. Occasionally in Japan, a wisteria will win the whole dang show. It's some pretty big, there are some historically important wisterias out there, and they do make good bonsai for beginners. You can make a few mistakes with them, and since they're basically trying to be a vine, you can overcome your mistakes with whatever you're left with to start over. I mean, like if something happened and wrecked this, I could just cut off the end and root it, with a jar of water or by putting it in soil. They do take to cuttings. That's the way these guys came. I think I got like 6 of these originally, and I put the rest of them in planters, and you can still see them around. One of them, of the cuttings, didn't root, but all the rest of them did great. And when I uncovered the one cutting that didn't take off, excuse me, it didn't have any roots at all. I mean, I was clear to see that they had started from just cuttings, and they had been placed in soil and expected to take off, and for the most part, they do. So I wasn't really, it was just kind of a little, I'm not going to say detective work, but it was kind of interesting to see that they were put into their cubes or whatever straight from cut, and then placed in trays and expected to make plants, so much so that they could then be sold, and with knowledge that they would likely come out with foliage the following spring. And out of 6, I had one that didn't. So that wasn't, I'm not going to complain about that, although I did remember that 3 years later. But I was still kind of amazed that the industry can be at least that certain of a product from cutting. So that's just something to bank away from later. So with that said, let's progress to what's going on. A little look at our balcony. Oh, I remember something else. I forgot to show you something else. I was doing a little work on the computer this week. This is what I listen to a lot of times whenever I play. But look what we have here. That is that. So, yeah, and according to this, that's now. So we're in between, that's me, and this is a few minutes from now. Looks to be probably 15 minutes from now. But then let's click on this guy. Now remember, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who lost a tree that I love because I did not move it out of the rain, and it basically died in 3 weeks, to my shock and awe. I had no idea that I could lose a tree that fast. So that's what our next 8 or 9 hours looks like. Then if I click on 10 day, rain, mostly sunny, rain. rain, 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 shower, 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 shower. So if I've got an issue where my trees got watered last week, and since that time, before they had a chance to dry out, they got rained on, and before they had a chance to recover from that, the humidity stayed in the 90s when they weren't being rained on. So then the leaves are not transpiring water. There's no place for the water to go. So then the water in the leaves, it stays there. The water and it doesn't photosynthesize. And the water in the trunks stay there, giving the roots nowhere to send the water in the pot. And since the humidity is also up to 90 something, that water in the pot is not going to evaporate either. So that creates a situation where we are overwatered. There's no place for the water we have now to go, not either in the air because the air is full of water, or no place for that in the soil to go into the tree because the tree's full of water, and the tree can't send it to the leaves to get it to burn out through the leaves because the leaves are full of water, or the needles, and then the air is full of water, so it's got no place to go from there. So what we want to do with all of this, with that situation that I've just described, and that much rain on the way, is on one hand, we have 0 indoor trees. Check that. My one little pink blossom over there could be my one and only indoor trees. If you want to stretch that, maybe that wisteria could hang out here next to the window, but it's the one that doesn't mind if the water. All of these guys are definitely outdoor trees, and they are definitely already showing signs of, your pines are going to yellow a little bit in the winter, but also I'm really having to watch the amount of water these guys are getting. I had just gotten, easy, Pat, I had just gotten my little guys to a state to where they were starting to dry out and green up. It's kind of like learning to ride a unicycle. Sometimes when you get new trees and stuff, it's like you kind of want to fall to one side and overwater, and then you fall back and maybe underwater, giving them a chance to dry out. And but I had just kind of gotten the unicycle up and rolling a little bit, and since then we've had all of that water. So as you can see, this drip tray, I've even poured water out of it to try to aid in its ability to dry. None of these things up here that are really wet now have been watered in 3 or 4 days. However, encouraging, that wisteria in the back corner looks dry. This pine looks dry. My ponderosa that has been here for a week because I was concerned that it had already been overwatered, having killed its sister that way. It stayed there. It's finally high and dry. And some of the smaller ones that I placed here yesterday have dried out. But then when I got ready to go to work, knowing full well that we were going to have most of the day of sunlight and almost 60 degrees, I've kind of put this tray back in the prime light area so that everybody could get the most of whatever was going to be offered, before I then saw the weather report and saw that we were about to be jack slapped again by tons of water, and everything got moved back where you see it. In fact, this guy came in last night and stayed pretty much right there instead of right here. So all of this area has been raked back. Now, in heavy rains, all of this stuff is wet. When I come out on the porch, I'm not standing out here to see how far it rains the whole time. But when I come in from work and I look and it's been raining all day, or I get up in the morning and it's been raining all night, I do see signs where this stuff, even further back here, is wet. But I think that's more as the wind gusts. We face the south. We're going to get some rain coming in this way. That's the ocean over there. but I believe our winds are more from that way, which is also the hills. If you've ever seen the videos of what happens with the fog as it builds up on one side of the foothills that are a few miles off, and then in time-lapse photography, it builds up really thick and then pours over the top of the mountain and runs down almost like an overflowing tub. So, and that's what it does. That then fog hauls ass along the ground. And I was my first morning in San Francisco some years back as a tourist. I sat at a red light and watched fog move at what I guesstimate to be about 50 miles an hour. I had never seen that before. It was something to be sitting in a cloud moving 50 miles an hour at a red light. Anyway, I think that positioning all of my trees back here will help them to dry out. As it stands now, a few of these are ready to be watered. This little bean, this little bean, this little bean, and this cascade, and this little bean back here, and possibly the ponderosa, if I look at it, can be watered, and the rest of everything up here is still recovering from a high amount of water that we've had the first couple of days, and nothing from here or here out has escaped any of this stuff. I mean, we are getting quite a bit. We're getting quite a bit of water. So those are my invasive actions. I don't know how I would do this if I had a backyard full of trees. I would probably be looking at some kind of overhead protection. If I had a garage, I'd probably put the garage door up so they could still feel the season, but stop that overhead water from deluging that deluge of water. But anyway, that's kind of what I have going on. Not as big of troubles as other people in other places are having. This is too much rain is a heck of a problem to have. California needs the water. Our reservoirs and coffers need the water. So we'll take all of that. We'll take all of that we can get. And but this is what we're going to have to do to deal with it and make sure that on the back side of this it doesn't cost us anything. So yeah, no big projects. We'll probably get back in the swing of things and be more proactive with clipping or pruning or shaking something up by this weekend. But right now we're in keep your head down and keep your powder dry mode, and we probably will be for a few days. So yeah, that's about all I got going on. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I'm just kind of getting a look. We just did that Dawn Redwood last week, and it's hanging out after its pruning. There's a quick look at our coastal oak, and there's a look at our cork bark oak after its pruning. It's now facing us, and then after that we made our branch choices and did our cuts on the bald cypress compilation. So that's kind of the work that we've done this winter in preparation, getting ready for spring. I could probably do a little needle reduction on that pine down there, the one that I call Simply P. I did do what I was talking about. I moved this cork bark pine forward about 4 or 5 inches, buying me a little bit more drier space for this guy, because it was getting watered every time it rained where it was, and it was a little farther that way than the end of this one. So I don't think the pot where I have it now is necessarily going to, on the 75-year-old cork bark, I don't necessarily think it's going to get too much water where it is now, but I think the one behind it might have been. That is Pride and Joy. That is a 17-year-old from seed when I got it. I've had it about 2 years, and Japanese black pine. And this was done by Jonas Dupois, and he is the author of Bonsai Tonight, and is a teacher and a author, I believe, and also he does sell tools and substrate, akadama, and the like. I'm just always really, and he has a garden nearby. So I'm able to, I have several of his trees. I love his work. And I'm kind of looking for, I'm kind of been checking the schedule lately. I'd like to maybe this spring look into taking one of his courses. That's something I'd like to do. I can't really break away and go off to another state and leave my job or leave this balcony to go off and do something with Ryan, Neil, or some of those courses, although I would love to. But I think it would be, but I would be able to, this is right up the street, just a couple of miles from here. And it's time. I have always had, like, well, I just started a new job. Let's see how the job goes. Let's don't start any school. Yeah, I've got a surgery coming up. I don't know when I'm going to be called away to do doctors. Let's just keep one thing at a time kind of a mentality. And now I finally freed up. I'm still working and all that, but I have freed up the social calendar for things that I want to learn on or do if they don't cost a fortune. And I'm thinking that it would be a good time to focus on that. And things are just now starting to pick up again. So when it comes to that, the people who were doing courses are just now starting to get their little courses lined up. And I'm noticing that here and abroad. So that is it. That's about all we're going to do. Pat's trying to keep her powder dry and keep my Japanese black pines happy. The oaks don't care. The wisterias don't care. The Dawn Redwood might. I need to watch that. It's been wet, a little too long. So at some point I may need to dry it out. Our next gig will probably be Saturday. And this is New Year's Eve. Okay, scratch that. Our last gig will be New Year's Eve. How could I not do New Year's Eve with you guys? I am one of those people who loves to do holidays like that at home with my dog. And that's my favorite way to do the holiday. I do have to come home at 6 from work, and I don't like being on the road after dark. But aside from that 15 minutes, I think I'm going to be happy to be here in my home and not out there mixing it up with the revelers. They can have it. I did my revel. I reveled like nobody's business. Yeah. All right. Already said this, but like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. And I will see you again on Friday night, New Year's Eve, which is tomorrow night. And thank you so much for watching.